Kaneta. last year ló wọlé last year
So, help me and come. Help me and take my business. Oh, awesome. Help me and put.
Read
Read one.
one.
You're muted. Read one.
Yeah, good morning, class.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah, so please give me a few minutes to come back to you.
Okay, sir.
So can you please allow me to share the screen? Sheifumi, will you be able to do that?
Yes, I think it's Mr. Olabimtom that can do that. So I'll reach out to him now to enable it, sir.
Okay, let's begin the discussion then. Uh, Let me reach out to him.
Okay, sir.
Okay, let's hope he responds on time. So good morning, class.
Morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Personal income tax, that's the focus of my discussion with you this morning. From the word personal, we are talking about an individual. So personal income tax deals with taxation of income of individuals as opposed to that of companies. So income is one of the tax base. I mean, when you make money, you pay tax. When you spend, you pay tax. When you acquire property, you pay tax. When you do some transactions in documents, you pay. So it is a relatively complex tax to administer because the taxpayers are mobile and the income is also mobile within Nigeria and outside Nigeria. Some of you are under the radar because the tax authority has no visibility of your activities, of your economic activities. Although technology will make that more difficult now. So it's a relatively complex tax because how do you determine what somebody makes? Somebody might look rich, but he may not have. There are times people wake up without money in their hands and people are bringing all types of requests, you know. So in 2003, the tax study group described personal income tax as the most complex and the least productive tax in Nigeria, contributing less than 1% to the overall revenue of the Federation. So we have never really optimized PIT. Fashola made a statement which you will see in the document that I will give you later he said in the whole of Nigeria, in the whole of Lagos, only about 8 million people are in their database, out of which only 3 million are, 8 million people are working, but only 3 million people are in their database. And he also spoke about the complexity of the tax. Part of the current reform of the committee headed by Taiwo Yedele is to see how we can meaningfully leverage the PIT because it's a comprehensive tax, it's a mass tax. In some other countries, even a country as small as South Africa, what South Africa makes from its personal income tax is more than the entire revenue, is more than our entire budget. So that means there is something we are not getting right as far as PIT is concerned. So you need to be on the lookout for some of the reform proposal by Presidential Fiscal Policy Tax Reform Committee of Taiwo Yedele. So let's look at applicable laws. I've given you an assignment and you need to know what the Personal Income Tax Act, what the Personal Income Tax provisions of the tax bill is all about. You must be able to integrate with what we are talking about now. So applicable law, the first one is the Constitution. Section 4.2 and item 59. Let me check whether he has enabled me to share. Excuse me, okay. Okay, I'm still unable to share, so no problem. So section 4, you are familiar with section 4. That's division of legislative power. So section 4 tells us that only federal government in item 59 of the exclusive legislative list can make laws on taxation of income, okay, profits and capital gains. You knew this in your first semester. So if you have any state law taxing income, that law is null and void to the extent of its inconsistency with the provision of the Constitution. This is what played out in the case of Institute of Human Rights and Humanitarian Law, AG Rivers. You know, Rivers State enacted a social service contribution law that imposed a levy on those who live, who work, and do business in the state. So the court declared the law null and void to the extent of its inconsistency. Okay. Unfortunately, the court also said because that tax was not allocated to the state by taxes, levies, approved list of collection act. But I think the right ratio was that it wasn't within the constitutional competence of states under the Constitution. Then statutes. Of course, the main statute is Peter, Personal Income Tax Act, Cap P8, Laws of Federation, as amended. It has been amended a couple of times. Some people cite Personal Income Tax Act 2011. That is incorrect. There is no such thing. The fact that the Constitution has been amended since 1979 does not mean that you now cite the Constitution with reference to the year of the amendment. No. You continue to cite it with reference to the year it was enacted or the year it was consolidated in the revised law, you know. So that is very, very important. Now, This is going to change very soon under the current reform to Nigerian tax bills. So Nigerian tax bill now contains all the taxes in Nigeria in only one statute. If you are familiar with Petroleum Industry Act, which puts all the laws relating to that sector in a single statute. So this is like a super legislation like PIA, I mean Nigerian tax law bill. So under it, you have personal income tax, companies income tax, capital gain tax, stamp duties, VAT, petroleum profit tax, and all other taxes. So Nigeria is moving away from the era of one tax, one statute, to the era of one tax law, imposing all the taxes, one tax administration bill containing provision for administration of all the taxes. So apart from Peter, which we are going to study in depth, we also have subsidiary legislations. Subsidiary legislation, you already know the purpose. They are made by the executive in order to operationalize or implement the provision of the statute. For example, if the law says, if the law vests the minister with the power to make regulation, and the tax law already says you can withhold, the law already vests power on certain people to withhold taxes and remit to government. That means a regulation is necessary in order to provide how this will be done. Okay, the law says employers should withhold taxes from the salary. How exactly are they going to do it? So all this you see in subsidiary legislation. The law provides for self-assessment. Self-assessment is, don't wait for the tax authority to serve you with any assessment telling you that this is how much you are liable to pay. You know, on your own, prepare your accounts, file some records, and tell us how much you are liable to pay, and go ahead and pay it. So all this you find in subsidiary legislation. So we have the personal income tax rate withholding tax regulation, the operation of pay-as-you-earn regulation, tax administration self-assessment regulations, then the personal income tax withholding tax regulation of 1990. So then we have case laws. Case laws, you know, although we say taxation is statutory, but as you can see, apart from the statute, there are other sources where you can find tax laws. Apart from subsidiary legislation, apart from the constitution, you also have case laws. The provision of the statutes, they are like dry bone. It is cases that breathe life into them. So if you read the statute, it may seem dry, uninteresting, but by the time you see how they play out in the court, you know, the tax law may provide that, look, a taxpayer is liable to pay tax to the state where he's resident. How does the law define residence? Then what are the issues that have arisen in the court on a determination of residence? Okay, so you see all this in cases. When I started teaching tax a long time ago, part of the challenges I faced was, where are the Nigerian cases on tax? I was using basically foreign cases. So I started compiling Nigerian cases. So I have a law report the first law report in Nigeria on tax dedicated to tax cases, which I called All Nigerian Tax Cases, 1922 to 2015, is in volumes 1 to volumes 11. It's very huge, okay? It took me a lot of time to do it and all that. So you see it in the library, okay? It contains all the cases and all the judgments, realizing that not everybody will be able to go through the entire volumes. I've now put only the summary and the decisions of all this into what I call a compendium of Nigerian tax cases. Okay? So I will encourage you to get this. I always sell it to my students at considerable discount. So I will encourage you to get it. Pick personal income tax, just read through it. You are going to see the first personal income tax in Nigeria and the last up to the time of publication. So this is going to give you a sense of issues we may not even be able to cover in the class. So that is an assignment I'm giving you so that you can be well grounded. You know, there's no way we can teach everything in the class. So we have to highlight some things for you to then do further research. And unless you get some of these materials, further research may be impossible. And of course, you know that I'm not saying that because I want to sell that book. So we quickly go to historical background to Peter. Now, historically, taxation of income was a regional matter. Okay? The regions, like states, had their personal income tax law. In the East, they call it finance law of the Eastern Nigeria. But West and North, they call it personal income tax law. So because of certain issues, militarization, the federal military government now made no. Let me retrace my steps before military now. So during the regional experiment, in order to minimize incidents of double taxation, I mean, to avoid a situation where an Easterner working in Lagos is taxed in Lagos and also taxed in the East, or when he remits his money to the East. So the central government at that time enacted what it called Income Tax Management Act to provide a kind of model income tax law, trying to provide framework for how regions should exercise their power. Okay? So the central government also made a separate law for Lagos, Lagos then being the capital city. So we had Income Tax Management Act of 1961, and then Personal Income Tax Lagos Act 1961, applicable in Lagos, Lagos being the Federal Capital Territory at the time. So before the promulgation of ITMA, why the Eastern region tax only income of those who are resident in the region, the Western region tax both its resident and also income derived from the region, irrespective of the residence of the recipient. So the result of this was that a resident of Eastern Nigeria working in Western Nigeria will be taxed twice on the same income by two governments. So ITMA, not being a taxing statute, So you need to know what is a taxing statute. A taxing statute is a statute enacted to impose tax. We have cases of non-taxing statute in Nigeria now containing taxing provisions. Okay? So ITMA did not impose any tax. Taxes, levies, approved list of collection is not a taxing statute. So ITMA, not being a taxing statute, did not contain any charging provision, but merely provided a framework for regions to impose personal income tax without or within minimum externalities. Region also enacted the Eastern region also enacted the Eastern Nigerian Finance Law 1962, and the Northern region followed suit in 19. You see that at that time, the regions did not even have personal income tax at the same time. One in 61, another in 62, the third in 63. And it was fine. Okay? Unlike today, that it is only one PIT for the whole of Nigeria. In the US, there are states without income tax. States who will just say, we don't want to tax income, bring all your money, we'll tax you only when we spend it. In a federation, you must have plural system. Plural system in the sense that every state will not follow the same model. Okay? Some states will say, well, we want to encourage people to bring their money. We won't ask you how much you have, how much you make, how much you have in your account. We will not be nosy packer about your lifestyle. But when you spend, we will charge you. And they do their maths, and they see that that's sufficient for them to finance their. So in 1972, the federal government enacted and expanded the scope of its taxing power in respect of income of individuals by enacting Income Tax, Armed Forces and Other Persons Special Provisions Act 1972, which then vest the federal government with power to tax the income of those who are in the army, those who are in foreign service, those who are resident out of Nigeria. Basically, they felt that this category of people should not be taxed by a state because it's difficult for them to determine where they are even residents, you know, because sometimes you post these people from state to state. So they felt it's better to vest the power to collect their taxes and that of non-residents in the Federal Tax Authority. So in 1967, the 4 regions became 12 states, okay, which posed the possibility of having income tax statutes in 12 different states and different rates. So federal government at this stage now felt that, look, to avoid this, it's better you centralize power to impose income tax. Is this a good policy? Oh, some people will say it's good, only one tax. But some people say, well, why not let each state determine how? We are lawyers, and you are going to discover when you get to law school that each state has its own high court rules and high court laws. We do not have one high court law for the whole of Nigeria because it is federal in nature. So the federal government now, the military now, we have, you know, since 1966, we have military. Military now unify all the provisions of income tax. They said, all of you must do it the same way. And then imposed uniform rates. Then under the 1979 Constitution, they now made income a federal matter. As we have seen in section 4 42 and item 59. But under the 1979 Constitution, it was item 58. So Peter was not enacted until 1993. It means since 1979, when we had a federal, the Constitution said federal should be the one making this law, for almost 14 years, there was no federal statute. So meaning that this is something state can do, and they were doing. But in 1993, we had Peter, which was sequel to the recommendation of the tax study group of 1993. Oh, they felt, let us have one income tax, and then everybody will just charge their tax under that. But is it a good model in a federal statute, in a federal system? That is another question. Then Peter has been amended several times by Finance Miscellaneous Taxation Provisions Decrees, which is like the Finance Act that we had recently, a yearly statute, amending different aspects of our tax law. So we used to have Finance Miscellaneous Taxation Provisions Decree under the military. Then for a very long time, they disappeared from our fiscal ecosystem until 1999, when Finance Act resurfaced again. So all the amendments to Peter in 2004 were consolidated. So following the recommendation of another study group in 2002, Peter was amended. There was a bill to amend it. That bill did not see the light of the day until 2011. So that means for a space of 18 years, the Personal Income Tax Act was not amended. So what does that show you? It shows lack of activity. I mean, if we have Finance Act since 2011 trying to do something about personal income tax almost every year, it means somebody is keeping the gate. Somebody is looking at the law to see whether there are leakages and whether there are areas of possible legislative intervention. Okay? So you can see the lukewarm attitude in terms of lawmaking. And these are part of the reasons why personal income tax had not actually delivered. Okay? So in 2011, there was an amendment. Olu Bob is requesting to record this meeting. So,
Ellis, I wanted to bring to your notice that you are now the host, so you can share your screen, sir.
What?
I wanted to bring to your attention that you are now the host, sir, and you can share your screen.
Has it gotten to you?
Yes, he has made you host.
Okay. But shouldn't we arrange all that before lecture? So now, highlights. Okay, I'm coming. So in 2011, Peter 1993 was amended. So it must be pointed out that there is no Peter 2011. Rather, the proper citation is Personal Income Tax Act, Cap P8, LFN 2004, as amended. And I referred you to section 21 of the Interpretation Act, which tells us how to cite statutes. So it says in the case of an act included in a revised edition. Right now, federal government is planning to revise LFN. So you are likely to have LFN 2025. So once there's a revision, and then that revision says Peter is now P1, that law becomes, the proper citation for that law becomes P1. But until then, you continue to refer to it in the name of the last, in the title in the last revision. So in the case of an act, in the case of any other act, by the number of the year in which it was passed and its number among the act passed in that year. You know, if the National Assembly is passing laws in year 2025, the first one they pass will be called Act number 1. It's like a serial number, Act number 2, Act number 3, irrespective of the subject matter. So if it is a tax matter and it is the number 7, it will be called Personal Income Tax Act, you know, CAP, so, P, so of that year, Act number 7 of that year. So the citation provision will always guide on how to. So following the recommendation of the Committee for the Revision of the National Tax Policy in 2017, headed by my humble self, the National Assembly enacted Finance Act 2019, 2020, 2021, 2023 in rapid succession. So that the revised national tax policy, which I had the privilege of chairing the committee, recommended that look, there should be a tax reform. In fact, most of the things we are trying to do now were recommended by that. Let me try and see if I can get a copy of the price NTP, February. Okay. Coming. I will share my material with you. Don't send it to anybody. Can you please stop the request? I'll give you the materials. Don't say I still bring it up. Otherwise, I won't be able to share my screen further. Governor, can you please cancel that request? Can you hear
I don't
me?
know who is requesting. Yes, sir, I can hear you. I don't know who is requesting, sir, but yes, sir.
So cancel it because I'm not able to. You want me to say okay, and once I say okay, the contents will go to a third party without authorization. That is a breach of data privacy. So I don't think I'm ready to do that now.
Okay, sir. Please, whoever is requesting should kindly cancel immediately.
Remove, delete your request so that I can share the screen. I want to show you the national tax policy. Okay, let me just read it to you if that is posing a challenge. This is actually disrupting the entire lecture.
Okay, so I think I understand what's going on. So Mr. Olabimtom is trying to stream on YouTube, and then I think that's why you're seeing that request, sir.
Stop sharing. Okay, this is the preface to national tax policy. Okay, let me just read the relevant part. We are confident. Can you hear me, please? Can you confirm? We are confident that the revised policy will eventually give a new lease of life to and inspire far-reaching reform of the Nigerian tax system in terms of structure, number of taxes, and administration within the context of our peculiar environment. Okay? So now let me take you to the recommendations. Because we saw that the previous policy in 2012 did not achieve anything because it was not implemented. Okay? So look at this. The Ministry of Finance shall set in motion machinery for tax reform. Taxation is a dynamic tool. Having reviewed the policy, the tax law and administration cannot remain stagnant. It is imperative to streamline existing and future tax law for an orderly development. Okay? I want to see where we talk about the Finance Act. I think we said the president, okay. The president and the governor shall ensure that budget speeches and presentation for the fiscal year consistently contain the overriding fiscal policies and summary statement of the expected tax revenue. This will give stakeholders a sense of what government plans to do and enable them to plan ahead. In the past, the president will speak, governor will speak, and they won't say anything about taxation. Okay, this prepared the foundation for all that to change. There's a place where we talk about finance law. The Minister of Finance shall work with the legislature to ensure that the requisite changes to tax law are enacted together with the Appropriation Act of the same year. This will require the executive to timely present tax law as executive bill for the timely consolidation of the National Assembly and the states. So a lot of what is happening now found its root in this national tax policy. So I will encourage you to take a look at them and see how the current reform has been inspired by the document. Incidentally, Taiwo also was a member of the committee. We worked together. He was an invaluable member. And then by the depth of his intellect, was able to influence so many things in this document. So we worked together. So when he was asked to work on this, I was also included in the team. So it was like as a matter of fact, after this document, there was an implementation committee that I also headed, and he was also a member. So this is very, very important. Okay. Where am I now? Okay. So highlights of Peter. Highlights of Peter. So you also need to get Peter. Follow me up. I will send a copy of Peter as amended till date to you. Okay, where you see all the amendments up till now. So Peter has 109 sections and 8 schedules. So the substantive sections are divided into 13. And this is imposition of tax law and chargeable income, ascertainment of assessable income. You have to assess income. How do you ascertain it? How do you ascertain total income? What's the rate of tax? And how do you avoid double taxation? Then income of who? And how do you file returns? Then how do you do assessment? After assessment, objection and appeal. After that, collection, recovery, repayment of tax. Then administrative and transitional provisions, offenses and penalties, power of tax collectors and order. If you look at this, before we even look at these schedules, you see that it contains not only provisions on imposition, but it also contains provisions on administration, okay? Assessment, appeals, collection, as from part 7. So under the reform that is currently going on, all the provisions relating to administration will be taken out and put in Nigerian tax administration bills. So Nigerian tax law bill will contain only imposition. We are taxing income in these circumstances at this rate, how to do it, how to now ensure that that translates into money in the pocket of, in the treasury of government is a matter for the tax administration, including offenses and penalties. Before, personal income tax will contain certain offenses, certain penalties, which you won't find in another tax law. So it is difficult to know the consequence for not paying. Then the time of payment, everything. So the whole idea now is to streamline them. Okay. Then now, Peter has 8 schedules. Schedules are part of the statute to where you warehouse the details of certain provisions in the statute. For example, Section 2 says a taxpayer is liable to pay tax to a state of residence. So how do you determine where I'm resident? I have a house in Abuja, I have in Sokoto, I have in Lagos, I have in London. So where am I resident? To which tax authority will I pay tax? These details you'll see in the fourth schedule. Then schedule 2 has to do with trusts, estates, settlement, tax avoidance schemes. I have $10 million. I know that if they trace the $10 million to my hand, they will tax it at the rate of 45%. So I then share it among my children in order to evade tax. So will this avail me? I have a lot of money, which I then say, I have a property, which I say, well, all the income from that property should be used to train my children until they are of age. How is the tax treatment? So these are provisions for dealing with all those schemes. Then there are not all income are taxable. There are certain income that are exempted, and there are also income of certain persons that are exempted. You don't tax income of government, you don't tax income of ecclesiastical and charitable organization unless they are trading or they are doing business. Then there are provisions on how retirement benefit schemes should be taxed. If you look at this provision, you'll see that the intention is not to exempt retirement benefits, but to tax them more liberally. Then capital allowances, this relates to those who are in business. Those who are in business, they need to have assets. How do they treat them? How do we incentivize them to continue to replace obsolete assets? Then the income tax table. After determining what is taxable and what is chargeable at what rate. For example, if a taxable income, it will not attract a flat rate. A percentage will attract a certain rate. Another branch will have a higher rate. Another branch will attract even yet higher rate. And anything above, certain amount will now be subjected to the highest rate. The basis of that you must have seen when you are looking at progressive taxation. Then there is also provision on double taxation arraignment. Then Schedule 8, warrant of authority to enter premises. This is like a search warrant. The tax authority has some power, but which must also be exercised following the process. So they want to train. So these are the basic questions that we are going to look at. On what is the tax imposed? How is the tax defined? How is income defined? Who is the taxable person? In what circumstances is a taxable person liable to pay? What is the rate of tax? How is the tax payable determined? What are the statement of appeal and recovery? What are the offenses and penalties? Then structure of the tax administration. So this is what I'm going to teach you going forward. But it suffices to point out that, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes, sir, we can hear you, sir.
Okay, did I put up the video? So I want to encourage you to follow through and then develop interest in different aspects of what I'm teaching you. So once you see something that interests you, note it. You will have opportunity to write in an area of your interest. Oh, you like federalism? You want to see how federalism, how the structure of the current tax system keys into federalism. Oh, the issue of residence, people living in, maybe you are even living in Akute, or in Isheri, which are Ogun State. So who are you liable to pay tax? What are the issues arising? I've taken you through the structure of the personal income tax, the schedules and all that. So you should note any area of your interest. So at some point, I will encourage some of you to even make presentation during the class. You know, if you have developed something that is of interest, I'll tell you to share it with the class and then maybe talk to it for about 5 minutes at a normal lecture. So I think I have to stop now because I really have to go. So apologies for starting the lecture late. We will do better in subsequent classes. Do you have any question? Okay, no question. Batch all your question till when we meet again. All right, bye-bye.
Thank you so much, sir. Bye-bye, sir.
Okay, thank you, sir.